I have really fought in the last few years to embrace a fearless mindset. So, doing the things that scare me, doing the things that are really uncomfortable, taking me outside of my comfort zone. And usually, when I get bored, I know that I'm not doing that. So, about every few months, every 6 months, I'm like, man, there's like nothing going on. I should quit. There's nothing to do. And that's when I know it's like, okay, time to take something new on. Time to grow in these areas.
So Alexa, welcome to the Second in Command podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you with us. It's also great to have another COO Alliance member with us on the podcast as well. Why don't we start with that
Yeah,
actually? Do you remember what it was that you were looking for when you decided to join the COO Alliance? Like as a director of operations, as a second in command, what was it that
sure.
attracted you to the community?
I think it was the beginning of the year. I was looking into ways to expand my skill set to grow professionally and was feeling the burden of time. Just didn't have time to read books quick enough, didn't have time to consume knowledge fast enough. And so I was looking for the community because conversationally, you just learn a lot more from others. So I took the plunge and signed up for the April event, which was phenomenal. And after that, have just been thrilled to be a part of the community, to learn from others. Yeah, just to be a part of it.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to come to one of our in-person COO Connect events as well. It's almost a fast track when you come to one of those events. You
Yeah,
really get to build the connections with all the other members. I think
sure.
we shed the imposter syndrome a lot faster because we're
hmm
surrounded with our peer groups as well. So talk to us a little bit about Hubert Equity Group. What is it the company does? What are you guys set up for and kind of poised for your growth?
Hubert Equity Group is a private equity firm that focuses in commercial multifamily. So we acquire, buy, and sell apartment buildings. And kind of what's our niche and what's made us unique is we find all of our deals off market. We have a team here in the office that makes over 150,000 cold calls a year to mom and pop owners across the nation, really in the Midwest and Southeast. So we started with 40 units about 4.5 years ago. We're now at 1,000 units, and we're really looking to scale to 10,000 in 10 years is the goal.
Commercial real estate, multifamily. Are you coming under pressure at all right now because of interest rates where we're now at like mortgage rates are now at 8%, where banks are looking at their loan to value and changing covenants? Are you guys coming under any pressure around that? And if so,
Sure.
how are you adapting so quickly to that? Because this has all happened in the last, 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, definitely when it began to increase, we saw a huge dissonance between the seller sentiment of what their property value is worth and then what we could actually afford. And so it's been a few months of really tough underwrites. We underwrite really conservatively, and so it would just compress the numbers. But seller sentiment's kind of catching up, right? They're realizing that they can't sell as high as they wanted a year ago. Their property's not worth it. So it's starting to settle in. Debt's kind of settling in now, but for a few months, it's definitely tricky.
Yeah, and are we seeing that that's happening as well? Are we seeing that property values are decreasing right now?
Oh, for sure.
They
Yeah.
are, right? Is that
Yeah. I
because of
think,
the investor side versus just the single homeowner side, or is it because single homeowners can't afford it as well and they're just dumping?
I'm not as familiar with the residential space. We really work on 100 units or more, but I think what we're really seeing it is just the number of trades is decreased significantly. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think it was over 50% less like transactions in the last 6 months than before. So,
Yeah, that was the number I was just hearing this morning as well, is that the number of transactions are decreasing because
yeah.
the people that own the real estate, they can't really sell it off because the person who's buying it is going to have to now basically finance it at much higher rates.
Yeah.
So it's like
hmm
no one wants the property, and then to sell it, they're having to drop. So is it a
Yeah.
good time for you guys in the position that you're in? Is it a confusing time? Is it both?
It's good though, because we came in 2020 just shifting over to commercial. And, the part that makes us unique is we're going direct to seller. We're not dealing with brokers. We're not dealing with their opinions of value. We're dealing with the sellers and what they think the value is. And that gives us a really good cost basis. So we're not feeling it as much as more of your traditional broker source deals. We're kind of overcoming that because of the way that we find them.
Talk to me about the cold calling. 150,000 cold calls in a year is extraordinary. Now, are you
Yeah,
doing this all with
thank you.
North American cold callers? Are you going offshore for that as well?
So we started, our kind of background is here in Columbus, we were in the residential space and flipping houses. The way that we found our houses was just knocking on doors, calling people whose houses just looked like they needed some help, saying, "Do you want to sell?" Seems like, the grass is long. It seems like maybe this isn't a property you want anymore. Can we take it off your hands? So we got them at a major discount because of that, right? 2020, shift focus a little bit. We moved into commercial space, applied that same cold call. Hey, we think like if it's a sleepy owner, somebody that's just done operating it, we're coming in saying we can solve that headache. We'll give you the cash, we'll take it off your hands, and you just get the big windfall of selling. So 150,000, it was, I think when we started, one guy calling, just making his list, but now we have a whole CRM behind them, a whole source of numbers for them that really helps support that volume.
So what's the DNA of a cold caller? What do they look like, act like? How do you hire them?
I mean, they're absolute sharks. They've got a huge drive, right? Our acquisitions guys are just the CEO of their territories. So they have a lot of drive to be independent, a lot of just personality.
It's crazy. It's interesting because it seems to be one of those either a dying skill or a skill that's moving more and more offshore right now. And I'm not sure what
Mm-hmm.
that is. You've been able to find them all just in
Yeah.
the Midwest. Are these people that want to
Yeah.
move into other sales roles, or are they just happy working kind of as you mentioned, the CEO
Yeah.
of their territory?
Yeah, I mean, some of the relationships that we build with sellers are a year plus long. And so, really, we're looking for people that can develop those relationships that are cool, just like shooting the breeze with someone for 5 minutes every 6 months, just building those relationships. So, yeah, we've been able to find phenomenal guys. They're coming in, we're coaching them, we're training them. Most of them don't have any experience in our industry, but they're really motivated.
So what was your background in getting into it? I mean, you've been with Hubert Equity Group now for over 4 years. What was your background in
Yeah.
getting into this role, and how did you learn the industry?
I was with Joe Hubert prior to that. They were doing an HGTV home and they kind of hooked me with the design piece. I was transitioning out of a job as a nanny and they brought me in just for help, right? I think when I started, they had just wrapped the show. So 7 days a week, 12-hour days. I came into the dining room and there were pizza boxes everywhere, job materials, paperwork, just spewing over the place. Started with no job title, no job description, no really onboarding or training, but just to help. From there, just built out their systems and processes. Kind of my sweet spot is bringing order to chaos.
All right, so you came into something very fresh, very new, had to
Yeah,
kind of figure all this out for your own. So how else have you grown in your role as a second in command?
about every year, I really try to sit down and think through like what are the skills that I need for the issues that we're having today. So I do that pretty intentionally every year, every quarter, look at that and readjust. And sometimes it's reading books, sometimes it's YouTube University, sometimes it's networking with people in those particular areas, but just trying to pull from all of them as much information as I can, roadmap it out, and pivot when I need to.
It's interesting. That was a comment that one of our COO Alliance members made a couple of years ago at one of our events. I was talking about that we really needed to constantly invest in our people and grow their skills. And one of the members said, well, we also need to recruit and hire people that are always growing their own skills independently,
Mm,
like really
yeah.
hiring people that want to continue to grow. Have you always been that kind of a person that you've always kind of invested in yourself and you've always wanted to grow independently of what the company might be saying are your weaknesses or areas to improve on?
I am pretty intentional. I love to not be bored. And so if I ever feel like a stagnant path, I'm tweaking and innovating.
You looked to join the COO Alliance and you said that part of it was, there's not enough time to be able to learn from all the other resources that exist. You like the learning from others. What kind of things have you picked up so far? You've been a member for about 7 months now. What do you think you've learned
Sure.
so far from the first in-person event you attended and then also from our online monthly events?
Well, this year we've almost tripled the size of our team within 18 months. And so there's just been a massive shift in just what the makeup of our team looks like, what they know about us, our culture. And so the COO Alliance, I feel like in the last few months has had this huge focus on team building and culture, which is something that wasn't even on my radar before. I wasn't really thinking about it because, I helped build the values, I helped build the culture here. So finding ways practically just to implement culture into the team has been so valuable.
What have the big changes been? And what's the size of your company now? How many employees do you have now, and how many did you have like a year ago?
So we've got 30 across all of our assets. And then here in our office, we have just under 15.
Okay, so about 45 total that you're overseeing, and then like a year ago, you would have had about 15 people.
Yeah.
So how has the company changed, and how have you had to adapt to that change then over that period?
Our company has really shifted, and it used to be everyone just pitches in on everything, regardless of the need, right? Where if we are acquiring a property, our team's going down there, walking every unit, and it's kind of who has capacity to do the work that's being done. And as we've shifted, as we've grown, it's really been more of whose expertise and area it is. And then from there, it's like building out the expectations for those roles and making sure that we're putting people or communicating the right information to the right people at the right time. And so that's kind of been my job recently, is just figuring that out, whether it's KPIs, whether it's coaching a person to be able to present what's going on in their area better, or building out the systems and processes to transfer that information. That's kind of where I'm sitting now.
Do you think your skills and the leadership team or management team skills have had to adapt and change as well? I mean, you mentioned the
Absolutely.
whole, it sounds like in the early stages you had the jack of all trades, master of none, right? Like
Right.
everybody could work on lots of stuff, and you
Mm-hmm.
just assigned whoever was available and into it. And now you're starting to hire people that have maybe more of the skill set, or you're putting people working on specific skills.
Sure.
How about the skills of the management team? Have you adapted
Yeah.
and changed?
It's very much gone from, yeah, you're right, doing everything to being able to lead the team, to set those clear expectations, to be more strategic, thinking past just 3 months, thinking past a year, like what do we want it to be in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years?
What do you think Joe saw in you? Because for him to start giving you some of these responsibilities pretty early on, and as the companies continue to scale, what's he seeing in you that allows him to, feel more comfortable in giving you more and more responsibilities?
Oh, well, I'm brutally honest first. I've got just an ability to see through all of the crap that's going on and understand the vision and then take us there. So he's got, a million ideas a minute. I'm able to come in and say, like, a lot of these suck. Let's just do this one or these three. And then I can lay out the path, right? So I've been able to do that from day one. This is where you want to go. I know all of the steps to get there, or at least I'll figure it out if I don't know.
How do you artfully tell a CEO that some of their ideas suck? When do you do it? How do you do it? Can you kind of walk us through doing that so that they don't get their back up and they don't argue?
I like to say that we were kind of founded on Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, which I'm not sure if you read it, but it's got different tactics on how to negotiate. And this guy, Chris Voss, I think used to be like a CIA negotiator with terrorists.
Yeah.
So that's his background. But we've taken that and we use it pretty much across the board at our company. But I use it and Joe uses it with each other, right? We'll mirror to make sure that we're getting the right information. We'll label all the emotions because there's a lot of emotions all the time. And then we really fight to get down to the real issue. So sometimes I hold off on timing on those, but we also set time every week that we know it's like the time to deal with the issues that we have.
You've mentioned kind of quarterly plans 2 or 3 times. I'm curious how you work with quarterly plans for the company and then also for yourself.
Thinking about it recently and realized that I've kind of been living in like a 90-day world since a kid. My dad would plop a huge white poster board down on our like kitchen table as kids and just write down a 3-month plan, right? I'm one of 9 kids, so there was a lot going on. It was hard to keep everything focused and aligned. And so we lived in that world and I didn't really think anything of it. So I took it into my college years, right? And it made sense because you can accomplish a lot in 12 weeks and it's not a whole year. So if you fail, it's whatever, you move on. So in college, I would do the same thing. I would write down my 3 months, write down the goals for the 3 months. And then when I got married, we kind of applied it to our marriage and our family, did the same thing, and then brought it into the business world, not knowing that it's something that everyone does, right? Everyone runs on quarters, and got to apply the same strategies and ideas to that too.
Wow. Okay. So a couple of really interesting points there to ask about. The first one is 9 kids in the family. Where were you in the 9?
Well, I was third. but
Third,
the
okay.
oldest girl, which is really important because the two older brothers readily admit that I'm the oldest.
Right. They were kind of
Yeah.
useless. Yeah. How does a family of 9 operate? What do you do that makes that kind of family work?
Oh gosh. Well, you'd have to ask my mom because she's, the one that's running it, but everyone chips in. Everyone kind of helps with everything. I had a lot of ownership over what I did as a teenager. Helped out with the kids a lot, but it's a well-run machine for sure.
You think a lot of those systems that you used and your family used to run the family outside of just the quarterly plan as well, do you think you bring those into the business world? My guess is that you would.
Probably, yeah. I think everyone has their own unique personality. Without communicating what the goals are, without communicating what we want to do, we're not going to be able to move as a unit to that. And I think there's also just a massive need for adaptability, right? You can plan as much as you want, but if someone falls down and breaks their arm, there's not really anything that you can do to keep that going.
Talk about working with an entrepreneur and CEO like Joe. What is it that makes the kind of role between you and him work?
I think from the beginning, we've been really collaborative and we've really tried to operate in our strengths. And at the same time, we've been really aligned behind the same kind of mission and value. So I think when we've got the same mission in mind, we know what the end goal is and we know what we're trying to achieve with building it, everything else kind of falls in line because of that.
You talk about kind of the success of the Hubert Equity Group, and I'm curious what you consider, the overall success of the group and what you've done that's helped make that company successful.
Well, it's very non-traditional, but we kind of measure our success by our giving, something that makes us, that sets us apart from private equity in general is our heart to give back to communities. And so we've been able to give over $250,000 or within our firm and then raise another $750,000 to organizations here locally and globally. And so that I think just being able to see the impact on the communities, just that families here in Ohio and also overseas are just impacted by that has been just heartwarming and hugely successful.
It's amazing. How about some of the pitfalls? What's been some of the struggles you've had to adapt to?
We often in the past have hired too quickly without expectations, whether it's an internal team member, a contractor, a property management firm. We hire industry experts, we bring them in, and they flounder. What we realized after reflecting is like we're hiring them without any expectations, without any clear communication of what their deliverables are, and just asking them to succeed with nothing that's like giving them a North Star. And so it's been hard. We've lost a lot of money that way. We've hired the wrong people, and then sometimes it takes years to regain the traction in that seat. But ultimately, it's led to the ability to have really, really clear roles and responsibilities and really fight to get the right people in there, but give them all the tools that they need to succeed.
Do you do a retrospective or a review of your past quarter as part of your quarterly planning at all?
Yeah, for sure. We spend several hours there.
How do you work with your direct reports? Kind of walk me through what your one-on-one meetings with your direct reports are like.
Yeah. Well, since we operate on traction, I always start with rocks, right? I want to know where they're headed, what are they doing, what are their next steps with those rocks. And then from there, it's just talking about where they want to grow, what areas of the business they're feeling a little overwhelmed in, making sure that they're in a good capacity to be able to do their work well. And then always just checking in personally, how's life, you know, making sure that they're doing okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of the modules in my Invest in Your Leaders course is running one-on-one meetings. I was speaking with a COO the other day, and he said it's literally changed his entire business by operating with this one-on-one coaching model that I've rolled out. I've used it for 25 years. So let's go into a little bit of Alexa. What's making you successful other than the quarterly planning, other than the kind of reviews you're doing? What do you think has made you successful in this director of operations, a second in command role?
I have really fought in the last few years to embrace a fearless mindset. So doing the things that scare me, doing the things that are really uncomfortable, taking me outside of my comfort zone. And usually when I get bored, I know that I'm not doing that. So about every few months, every 6 months, I'm like, man, there's like nothing going on. I should quit. There's nothing to do. And that's when I know it's like, okay, time to take something new on. Time to grow in these areas.
And I think as well as leaders at some point, I think this is critical for all of us as leaders, we have to realize that our job, our core role is to grow people. The reality is our to-do list of stuff that needs to get done doesn't mean we have to do it, right? It means how can we take all the stuff on our to-do list, delegate 100% of it to people, and then spend our time growing their skills and growing their confidence, growing their capacity, and then find out more stuff that we can do to grow and delegate. It's almost like delegate everything and then spend all of our time growing people, growing their confidence and skills. I want to go back to the 21, 22-year-old Alexa. You're leaving the family of 9, you're just getting started on on your business career. What advice would you give the 21-year-old that you know to be true today, but you wish you'd known back then?
Well, 21-year-old Alexa had just graduated college with a philosophy and religious studies degree. I had just gotten married. We were hundreds of $1,000s in debt of college, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was a massive introvert. And I tied that introvertedness with social awkwardness and just the, poor people skills. I lived with that crutch. So I never tried to go outside of that comfort zone. Now I kind of know that introversion is not social awkwardness. It's just deriving energy from being by myself. But if I would go back, I would say, Alexa, do the things that scare you and know the values of relationships. So go out and make them.
I love it. Well, I'm glad you're a member of the COO Alliance. You're going to have a lot of great relationships with your years with us as a member.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing with us on the Second Command podcast.
All right. Thank you.
To be a really good COO, you have to be good at operations. You have to be good at basic company systems, right? That's the exact thing you don't want to do as a CEO. What I would suggest for anyone who wants to have the seat is to say, can you give up the control of being the one who decides how things are done and just start saying, here's what I want to happen,